Hey guys, so a few weeks ago Baldur's Gate 3 came out and it has come out to great reviews and I actually played it now that I'm game streaming. Subscribe if you actually want to watch it. And I really enjoyed it and I think the quality and the love that the devs have put into this game is clear for everybody to see. However, a bit of a dialogue has been happening, to say the least, about devs versus gamers, and also how certain things are possible according to game devs and certain things are not possible according to the game devs, and how gamers are feeling about these things. There's been a lot of tweets about it, there's been a lot of articles about it, and there's also been a lot of videos. IGN posted about it. There's very strong emotions being felt right now. So I wanted to kind of like leave it a few weeks to make sure that things tempers are kind of like calm down a little bit. But I do have a strong opinion about this. I believe there's a lot to be said about the issue because me being a gamer first and foremost, and then being a game dev for the last 20 years, I have strong opinions, and I think that there is a lot of positives and negatives on both sides, and we need to address them, at least from my perspective. This is going to be a video that might be a little bit loaded and is going to be off the top, but hopefully it will make sense to all of you, because there is a strong feeling inside of me to speak out and to this situation, because I think there is quite a bit of unfairness from both parts, and I'm going to actually kind of like try to speak to that in this video. So without further ado, let's get to it. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the video, and if you're new here, my name is Harvey Newman. I've been a game dev for about 20 years, mostly working in animation, being a game director, a game lead, working mostly in AAA games such as Battlefront, Battlefield, Horizon, Warhammer, Crisis. There's been so many games over the years. Now I'm actually focusing on YouTube, I'm focusing on consulting, and I actually have much more fun doing this. I feel like I'm not tethered to one thing for a long period of time. Now, because of this, I think that I'm in a unique position that I can speak out to certain things about the situation, because it's kind of like a double-edged sword from a dev's perspective, right? Because at the moment, most of the devs working especially in AAA, they can't say much because they are under NDAs, and most of the time the companies are very strict about the things that you can say, and normally you have to ask them before you can say anything. But just to kind of give you a lowdown of what has happened so far for people that are not aware, is that Baldur's Gate came out by Larian Studios, and they are an amazing developer, and I've met some animators that worked at Larian and they have nothing but great things to say about the studio. And I love how much passion they put in the Baldur's Gate IP, and you can definitely tell that they actually absolutely love what they do, and they respect the gamer, which is amazing. So they put out the game, and then what has happened is that a few tweets from some developers have come out, and they basically said, this is a great game, but don't take this for granted, because game development is hard and this should not be seen as a staple that should be followed. Loosely put, like I'm paraphrasing, and perhaps it's not exactly what was said, but this is how at least I perceived it. So the backlash came from the gamer community about how comes you guys don't have high standards in your games and you're actually downplaying this high quality, amazing game, and how comes all games cannot be up to this quality. And then there's also the issue of paying for a game and then receiving the full game day one, fully polished, amazingly done, and this is what you get, right? There's no 0-day patches, there's no a DLC that you have to download or anything like that. And as Larry has put it really well, they basically say, we don't actually do any DLCs, any downloadable content. The game that you buy is the game that you get, and we don't intend to actually do anything like that in the future. So it kind of gives, obviously, Larian a lot of respect, and I respect him a lot for that, because to me it just tells me that Larian Studios actually respects the gamers very, 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 very much, and they believe that a product should actually be polished, tested, and finished before gamers get it. That is basically what the controversy has been about, and IGN did a really good video from a gamer's perspective, talking about why people are vexed with developers that talk about things cannot be as good, don't take it for granted. That is basically what has happened. Now, I'm actually like in between these two camps. And the reason why is because I've been a game dev for the longest time, and I normally have a tendency to kind of like go towards game dev, mainly because, you know, you've been there, you've been through the trenches, you know how hard it is, you know how hard it is to create games and all that stuff. However, I'm starting my own game studio, right? So it kind of becomes very important to me to actually start seeing things how players see it. And this, I did that when I was a game dev as well, but now much more so. So you can actually deliver a product to gamers that is actually really good for them, that they can actually truly enjoy. And the game that we are doing is in the same vein in terms of being a single player, being a narrative based, being a character based, narrative driven kind of game. It's an action adventure, but it's kind of like the same values that we want to bring. And we also want to build a product that once you get the product, this is what you get, you know, this is the value that you get. And it's polished up to wazoo, so you can enjoy it, and you can actually just either buy the disc, nobody buy discs anymore, but you download the copy and you play it and you feel satisfied, and you can actually kind of like go from beginning to end, no problems, great stuff. So I appreciate Larian Studios in that way. However, I want to kind of like give you the perspective of a developer working in a studio right now and why they said certain things. I'm not justifying it whatsoever because I don't really agree with what was said, but developers working especially in AAA studios, a lot of the times what happens is that you have a studio with a lot of people, and what this fosters is basically this sense of like you already worked on an IP for many years and you have to set a certain standard and you have to follow certain trends. And this is not so much the developers doing this, it's normally the, you know, higher ups that actually go, now let's do DLC and now let's do metaverse or whatever it is the new trend is. And then developers need to actually create a game around those new things that are happening right now, right? More player count, let's add that in, right? Things that of that nature that you as developer, you have to design and work around and create around, but normally comes from the higher ups. So this is, I think, what certain developers were talking about when they said don't expect every single game to come out with this quality and all that stuff. The difference here between Larian Studios and most AAA games is that Larian are independent, and they can actually do a lot of choices and creative choices that are their own. And because I think they have a really good rapport with the IP, Baldur's Gate, they can actually kind of like back those with creativity and a really sturdy, amazing game, right? Those things are not really true all the time when developers work with an IP that is really big, or even if you work with your own IP, especially if it's been set up for many, many years. Normally there's a sense of expectation from the player base that you have to follow. So there's always kind of like a north that you have to guide. A lot of the time, especially as games kind of like come out and number 1, number 2, number 3, the developers are not the same. The team changes. They want to do different things. There's a sense of maybe not knowing exactly what to do in the beginning, and then when you go into full development, is all hands on deck, and then we just have to finish the game. It's like a start and stop kind of situation all the time, and you kind of hope that that game is going to come out absolutely amazing by the time you finish, but you're never quite sure, especially as you develop the game. There's a tendency within game developers to actually say, like, unless you are in it, it's very difficult to understand. Even game studios themselves, from my experience, whenever you start any game in any development, is basically a cloud of ideas, and you don't know exactly if this is going to work until years go past and you start putting those ideas together and see if they stick until you have a game. So this is kind of how most games are developed, right? This is why games are not consistently amazing all the time, because sometimes those ideas don't stick, sometimes you don't have the right people to do it, sometimes you don't have the right engine to do it, sometimes the tools are not quite right, or you don't have the know-how how to do certain things. So even though you started with the best ideas, with the best prototypes and things like that, the end product ends up being different. I think this is what they were talking about when they said that gamers don't understand how games are made. However, I do think there's a massive shift that has happened over the last 10 to 15 years, where gamers are way more aware of how games are made now, much more than before. Before, if you think about it, you knew who published the game. If you think about it 20 years ago, you knew that Sony published the game, you knew that Nintendo published the game, but you didn't even know what the studio that actually worked in the game was. It was only about 15 years ago or so that you started hearing names like Naughty Dog and Blizzard and all these other studios, and people started kind of like going, oh, okay, so games from this studio work a certain way and look a certain way. And now we're going deeper into a level of, you know who the game director of the game is, or you know who the lead animator or the animation director is for this game. And then you expect certain things. If it's a Steven Spielberg movie and he has this producer and he has this composer, then all of a sudden you know that the movie is going to be amazing, right? John Williams and Steven Spielberg and these, all these people come together. Oh my God, right? It's going to be really good. Same thing with games. And I love that. And I do think that certain developers are still stuck in the idea that 10 to 15 years ago, where gamers didn't know much about how game development worked, they are still stuck on that idea today. They are very much insular in the fact that they think that the knowledge from the studio is enough to develop a game. However, I'm a big believer that gaming communities are absolutely a must for any game being developed today. I think that you should ask your opinion to a gaming community. I think you should have a Discord server where you have fans of the game, fans of the studio, where you can ask, guys, what do you think of this playable demo? You think the mechanics work or they don't? What's wrong? Give me constructive criticism. I do think those things are incredibly powerful nowadays, mainly because gamers are super knowledgeable about their games, about game feel. They know what they like, they know what they don't like. And as everybody knows, the gaming community has very strong opinions, right? As long as those opinions are constructive, I think any developer out there should take those opinions and implement them in the game in the best way possible. Not every opinion, but as long as it rings true and is something that has been said or thought of inside, and now the gaming community is just saying the same thing, maybe you should pay attention to that and change it, right? I think we're stuck in a little bit of two worlds, right? There is the developers that believe that by kind of like keeping things together and kind of like having all the ideas inside, we cannot say anything about the game to anybody until it releases, and then we can actually talk about the game, are one type of developer. And I think most AAA developers are that way right now. And then there's actually the indie developers, right? The developers that actually talk with the community, ask for opinions, give you like a early playable demo, have a Discord server that they can actually talk with the community. Those are now the future of where the industry is going to. And this is what my opinion is, just my opinion, nobody else's. But I think this is why the sense of a lot of AAA studios maybe not hitting certain quality, or maybe not really listening, or maybe doing the same thing over and over again comes from, right? I do think indie developers are kind of like the North Star of our industry right now, where they actually kind of are showcasing how powerful gaming communities are and how much gamers know about their games. And they also have strong opinions about the things that should work and how certain elements of some other game actually would work so well with this game, for example, right? So I do think this is the future of where we're going, and certain people are stuck in the past of where we were. I do think that nowadays you should be listening to the external sources, the external communities, to make a better game. And I think ultimately this is what Larian Studios did with Baldur's Gate. And I think ultimately this is why the game is so polished and is so amazing. And also is one of the games that I think that you need to live with it for a while in order to get acquainted with the game, in order to have fun, which is another thing that I think that is being lost a little bit over time. We have a tendency to be handheld in games nowadays a bit too much, so we can have fun from the get-go. As soon as we get the game, that's it. We have fun. And I think Larian with Baldur's Gate went a little bit more how, they're making games in Japan, right? Where you have a slow build up to the game, and unless you commit to the game a good 10-15 hours at the very least, then you can actually enjoy the game. I really think that Larian did incredibly well on that point as well. This is some of the things that are missing from a lot of AAA studios out there, where they actually have a game that handholds the player so much and gives you prompts exactly where you need to go or what you need to do, or press this to actually do that. Or it becomes a very superfluous experience, and it doesn't allow the player to figure out things for themselves. So in a nutshell, that is basically what I wanted to say. I hope that is cohesive, I hope that makes sense, and I hope it rings true to you. Don't be mad with developers right now. The games industry is incredibly young, so we need to actually kind of like be patient and hoping that certain studios are learning from their mistakes and are willing to do better. They are also willing to actually look at indie devs and see how they are doing things in order to emulate. And I do think Baldur's Gate is going to end up being one of those games that people are going to look at a lot. They might not tell you, but everybody's paying attention. And that is the kind of change that we need. If you enjoyed this video up to now, definitely consider subscribing, giving it a like, and comment down below and let me know what you think about, all this news about Baldur's Gate and gamers and, all this stuff that is happening right now about, paying for more DLCs and things like that. How are you guys feeling right now about the games industry in general? Just so you guys know, I no longer have Patreon, but I have YouTube subscriptions. All my patrons actually are now on YouTube subscriptions. Consider clicking the button down below that says join to see what the perks are when it comes to subscriptions. I hope I get to see more members out there because I'm posting some behind the scenes videos so you guys can watch on a weekly basis. And that's all I had for now. Until next week, stay well, stay safe. Peace.